Hey everybody, Wiley here with Ragnarok Meads, and today I'm joined with my buddy Drew, and we're going to be making you a pink lemonade Melomel. And a Melomel, of course, is a fruit-based mead. And of course, we're doing this in good faith of Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Should we kiss?
Not this time.
Okay.
I'm chapped.
Where were you chapped? Okay. So whether you're new to making mead or you're a long-time maker, I highly recommend sticking around. There's probably some information in here that would be quite useful to you, because at the end we're going to be doing some data collecting. I'll explain a little bit of that with bricks and specific gravity and different tools like hydrometers and refractometers and stuff. So I highly recommend you stick around for it either way. And as usual, welcome to Ragnarok. So today we're doing a pink lemonade, and I kind of decided to do something a little different today. Instead of just chopping up the fruit and throwing it in, I decided to do a simmer on this and kind of do a reduction. So I added, let's see, I have about 3 cups of strawberries. I did 1 cup of lemon juice yesterday. I squeezed it, and then I added a 1/4 cup of light brown sugar to make it extra sticky and extra sweet.
Can definitely smell the lemon.
Good. Yeah, actually I wanted you to kind of give it a little taste. I just gave a little bit myself there. Go ahead and scoop some
I
out.
thought you were going to do it for me.
No, I'm not going to feed you.
I'm not going to food in you?
I'm not going to food feeding you. Not on camera anyway.
I would have to get you. Pretty yummy.
Is it alright?
It's fucking good.
Okay, good. Because I was trying to make sure that I did a decent balance on the lemon to the strawberry. I didn't want the lemon juice to like overpower the whole thing, even though that's kind of the idea of a pink lemonade, right? You want a strong lemon flavor, but I want it to be kind of
even. It's a balance. It's a nice balance.
So we're going to go ahead and throw some flame on this. And I have the honey, 10 pounds of honey, wildflower honey from Lazy Bee Hill over here in Tascadero. I have that sitting in the sink in hot water. You mind doing a little bit of a thermometer on that? And I'm going to go ahead and get some water going for the yeast. I don't prep my yeast the night before. I do it the day of.
About 134.
134 Fahrenheit.
Degrees Fahrenheit, yeah. Or 57 Celsius.
Well, it's either one or the other, Drew.
It's the same. Both sides.
No, those are 2 different numbers, clearly.
Yeah.
American education system. So what was it? 134 Fahrenheit?
134.
Okay, perfect. So I got this water going. We're going to get this boiling a little bit. Typically I add maybe like a little bit of sugar, or there's something else in the water for the yeast to kind of start nomming on a little bit while it's getting going, just to kind of get a little proactive. But I already have like probably diabetes in a box right here with all the strawberries, lemons, and extra sugar that I added. So I'm gonna do what I normally do and add some chamomile, which is not like the typical ingredient, but you know, I can't live without putting herbs in something. So I'm gonna do a 1/4 cup of chamomile, so it's not overpowering, but it kind of helps give it like a subtle herbal flavor. Like, yeah, I think that'll help sweeten that up, just like a nice rounded mellow sweetness to it. So I'm going to toss a 1/4 cup of that guy in there. Because I've added herbs to this and not just sugar, I'm actually going to draw it up to a boil, so it's like you're making an actual tea, right? So I'm going to get it nice and hot, going to let it boil, and then as soon as it starts boiling, turn it off, let it steep for about 15 minutes to drop the temperature a little bit, and of course we'll do some temperature gauging at that point as well. Right now, like I said, we've got our honey sitting in the hot water to kind of liquefy a little bit. And so while we're waiting for that, we're going to go ahead and add about 1 gallon of water to our jug. Sure, go ahead and pop one open. So the reason I do this is because I want the honey to be able to kind of swim around the water a little bit instead of just sticking straight to the bottom immediately. So it kind of gives it like a cushion, I guess you could say. There we go. Perfect.
I literally dump stuff into tiny holes with a funnel for a living.
It shows. It's worked out very well.
Amazing at that. Yeah.
All of your work
Excel.
all of your work has led to this one moment.
And I nailed
it. And I'm gonna, this reduction, of course, it has to kind of simmer and boil just enough to kind of get it back to a syrupy state. Right now it's a little bit liquidy, so we're gonna wait for that temperature to kind of get up there and make it a little bit syrupy. And plus the heat from this and from the yeast starter that we're gonna do right now, it'll help contribute to some of the heat in the jug and retain some of that temperature to help the yeast kind of get started and motivated. So the basic temperature that I've seen so far in my storage area for fermentation is roughly 71, 72 degrees right now, which is a perfect temperature for the yeast to survive. Like the 68 to 74 range is what I really like. And I think the yeast does the best in that temperature range. So hopefully this temperature that we're adding to it will equalize out a little bit in the next couple of days, and it'll get the fermentation going, maybe even tonight, possibly. And the yeast that we're going to be using today is going to be a Lavlin K1 V1116. And the reason I'm using this is because it has more of a, it brings out more of like the sweetness and ciders and meads and the fruit. It just helps with those types of fruity sugars a little bit better. And I use it for about half probably of my meads because most of them are fruity, right? So I'm going to use that one for those, and then plus it kind of helps build up a higher ABV yield, I've noticed from time to time. Once again, it depends on what your recipe actually calls for. So once those get going and they're done boiling and done cooking, then we'll come back to it and let it sit, and we'll pour the honey into the jug. Alright, so we have 1 gallon of water already set in there. We have our reduction sitting, and we also have our yeast bath sitting. I have not added the yeast yet. It's still waiting. I'm going to wait another 13 or so minutes for the water to cool down, come down to temperature. The chamomile is in there and it's steeping. So all we got to do right now is just pour in our golden delicious elixir of life here. We're going to add the yeast to that in approximately 12 minutes now, and then that should be, right? Yeah, it should drop down another 10 or 20 degrees hopefully. And if not, we can just always add a little bit of water to it, no big deal. And then I'm adding 2 packs to it, which is 5 grams. Yeah, so it's going to be a total of 10 grams. Sorry. A total of 10 grams. Ooh. Oh, good taste. Don't, what? No, Pooh Bear, no. Yeah, it's nice. This one's fully local, so the guy gets all of this honey from all over the city. I like this one. It's pretty good. It's got a nice musty earthiness to it, a light floral kind of balance. I think there's like even kind of like almost a fruity, citrusy type of taste to it, but definitely it's a nice earthy kind of woody, I guess, type of taste. I like that because it's not overly fruity or anything or flowery. Now the reason I don't boil the honey is because I don't like the flavor, and the whole point is to have the honey as the main ingredient, and if you boil it away, you just ruined your main ingredient, and that's how I feel about it. So I don't do that, and people I think are primarily doing that simply because they're concerned for bacterial growth and other stuff, but this is pretty well filtered. I mean, it's not, it's raw, but it doesn't have any bug bodies or any honeycomb or anything that I've noticed in it. And plus, the honey itself is antibacterial, so I'm not overly worried about a lot of things going wrong with it. I've only had, I think, 3 batches go bad, and they were very specific reasons. One was I didn't use a good enough water source on one batch. I decided to neglect it, and that was one of the early Allfather ones. It was really bad.
You use like tap water instead of distilled?
Yeah, I tried boiling the water to kind of clean it, but that's just not how that works because that was stupid. But that didn't turn out so great. And let's see, the Adune, one of the Adunes turned into vinegar. Now knowing that oxymel is a real type of mead, where it's a vinegar-based mead, I wish I didn't throw it out now, because I felt stupid twice. Once for failing and fucking up the first batch, and then twice for throwing it out when it wasn't actually fucked up. It was actually useful to some degree. And then a third one, which actually did not end up getting ruined. I saved it just in time, but I had so much fruit in it that it started to form a cap. So you have the water level, sorry, you're over there, water level, and then like fruit sitting on top and getting too much oxygen and not enough wetness and not enough yeast eating it. So the oxygen was getting to it and forming kind of like little mold spots. There's only a couple. It wasn't all over the place. I had only like a couple dime-sized pieces. So I just took a turkey baster and sucked them out, and I cleaned it up the best that I could that way. And then I just shook it up and let it go back to doing its business, and just try to keep an eye on it and make sure that I stirred it every single day to ensure that there wasn't anything resting and oxygen and stuff wasn't getting to it like that. And it worked out just fine. It turned out being really delicious, and there was nothing wrong with it. So you just got to keep an eye on stuff like that if you're, doing a Melomel specifically. That's my favorite part of this. Eating all the honey.
Well, how big is that one? 5?
This one should be about 6, and then the other 2 were 2 pounds.
Okay.
Would you mind? We're at about 6 minutes now. You mind checking the temperature on that chamomile?
About 140.
140?
141.
Nice. Perfect. We'll keep waiting that extra 5.5 minutes there. And we just gotta wait for the yeast to activate. And after I pour the yeast in, we're gonna wait a little bit longer still, just so that it has time to start actually forming. So probably like another 5 to 10 minutes to kind of let the yeast get activated. And then once we pour it in, they'll start swimming around and be like, oh, I'm awake, let's eat. Yep. Alright. How much is left in that pot?
Just like a little slab.
Roughly, it'll be between 4 and 5 gallons because of how much space that honey takes up. It's not going to be a full 5 gallons. Ready? Yep. Perfect. Okay, a couple more minutes and we're about ready. So right now we're at about yeah, kind of on the fucking ceiling. Okay, so we're roughly at about 79 degrees Fahrenheit with the addition of the reduction, 1 gallon of water, and about 10 pounds of honey. We're waiting 1 more minute and then we're going to add our yeast.
125-ish.
125? Yeah. That's not bad, yeah. So when it gets down to about 120 is the most optimal range, I feel, for adding the yeast. Typically, like I said, I'll just add it when you start seeing the water kind of percolate, just very, very little. Like you start seeing the bubbles forming at the bottom of the pot and starting to rise, and that's when I shut it off. And you can add yeast at that time and then just let it sit for about 10 or so minutes and it'll start cultivating. It may not look like it. You may not get like a bunch of foam, or it might not look like it's actually starting to take, but in my experience it does anyway usually. So it just ranges from a day or 2 or so. Now we're going to go ahead and add the yeast. I try to spread it out a little bit because if it gets poured on top of itself, it starts clumping. So I try to make sure that I sprinkle it about as evenly as I can, so that it doesn't form those yeasty clumps. Alright, we're going to go ahead and add our yeast now. It's at a nice kind of weedy looking milky consistency right now.
One full one?
One full one. Like I said, we'll probably end up getting about 4.5 in total. Yeah, 3. I like to fill it to right about there. I've seen
top of the edge.
Yeah, I've seen people on forums and Reddit and stuff ask about headspace and air for like what's appropriate. Do I fill it all the way to the top? Do I fill it down to here? I always leave a little bit of headspace just so if there is any foaming, any fermentation that does happen to grow, it's not going to push a bunch of stuff out and fuck up your airlock. And plus, having a little bit of headspace isn't going to hurt it. I haven't had any real problems that I've noticed with any of my meads, and they've all turned out pretty dang good. So, like
almost
4 and like 7/8 or so gallons. So yeah, there we have it. And then we'll meet you outside for data collecting. Okay, so here we are. We're going to be collecting our data for our pink lemonade, and the temperature of our pitch was at 75 degrees, and we have 0 bubbles right now because there's absolutely no action taking place. The yeast isn't eating anything and producing any CO2. So we're going to start collecting with our hydrometer and our refractometer, and I will reveal those purposes a little bit later as we keep going along and start collecting. I'm going to check the Brix first. And the Brix measurement for water is going to be at 0 for both a refractometer and a hydrometer, and for specific gravity it's going to be 1.0, just in case you didn't know. But I think most of you do, because you've probably been doing this longer than me, maybe. So 1.5 Brix next to the hydrometer, 1.5 in that little square right there. And 6. So it's going to be 1.006. Refractometer. And if you're not familiar with the refractometer, what it does is it takes the water and sugar levels and splits them so that you see a blue and white divided line. You can see that pretty soon if you want to go ahead and take a peek in that. You can see for yourself. It's lined up pretty well, just like a hydrometer, but it only has Brix and it only has specific gravity. I don't always get very clear readings, but I try my best. And then of course there's charts online that you can check if you have some idea of what measurements you have. You can check against some charts that you can find online from Brix to specific gravity calculation. 1.5 Brix for refractometer and a 1.006 for specific.
Identical.
Nice. And we'll be taking a look at this as a progression. I'll post it on Facebook and I'll try to keep up on it like normal, but I'm interested to see how this one turns out because I haven't done one like this before. I've been kind of putting it off. But
how frequently do you check?
Every 3 days. So I'll do the BPMs, the bubbles per minute. If it's starting to percolate, I'll calculate that through my airlock and time it, and it kind of helps give you an idea of what's being released and how much, and it just adds to the material of knowledge too, I think, overall. So every 3 days I'm checking these exact same stats, but every single day I'm checking the CO2 progress. So we'll come back to that when that happens. Good, thank you. I hope you learned something from this. And of course, this was, again, a pink lemonade Melomel with strawberry lemonade reduction with a 1/4 cup of sugar added to it to help give it that extra delicious stickiness. 10 pounds of honey, 2 packs of Lavland yeast.
A 1/4 cup of chamomile.
And then, yeah, a 1/4 cup of chamomile. That's right. So hopefully that'll come out really good. I think it smelled fantastic when we were making it.
It
so
did. It was delicious.
And hopefully everybody at the Beer and Taco Fest is going to like this one. I'm hoping to get a good result out of the ABV. And when it comes down to calculating ABV, I will post a separate video on that because it's a bit extensive. As I said, I'm using a refractometer and a hydrometer. They both have 2 different functions. One measures the sugar level specifically, which would be the refractometer, and then the other one measures buoyancy, and that's the hydrometer. But little known fact is that sugar does actually contribute to buoyancy. So
denser.
Yeah, so that's why I use both tools, is to measure that. And again, I will do a full video on that and why I do that. I feel that I get a better and more accurate measurement with ABV when it comes to mead, because as I said, I don't boil the honey. So you don't have that immediate sugar source already floating around in there. It's at the bottom and it needs to dissolve. So as it's dissolving, it's releasing sugar the entire time. So you're not going to get an accurate measurement, and you're going to get negative measurements sometimes. So if you have ever had problems with negative measurements with your mead, that's more than likely why. It's because you have sugar sources inside your mead that haven't been released yet and eaten by the yeast. And they're just sitting in there, and it just keeps changing and fluctuating. But again, a separate video for that one because it's extensive. But anyway, thank you, Drew. I appreciate your help today. That was awesome. And we'll come back and we'll do a tasting of this, hopefully.
Today. No. This time I just went with it.
Let's get over a little bit. No. Just leaving. Sexy accidents in the kitchen. Careful. Oh, right. And the approximate temperature was at 75 degrees. You're not invited.
I was talking about on the lips, weirdo.
Sure. Oh, excuse you. Hey. Excuse you. Whoa, hey.
Slapping the berries. This is my nickname in high school. They called me Plop.
Okay.
Wait, can you cut that out?
There we go. Stand a little bit more over because I can see your beautiful face.
That's why I'm here.
Here we are, roughly 20 hours later, after the fermentation process was started. And we've got quite a significant amount of foam, which is great. And our airlock is moving a little bit, slowly but surely. It is moving. I came down here about 6:30 to 7 o'clock to check it, and it was bubbling. So that's fantastic. It always scares me every single time that I start fermentation because it's like waiting for a baby. I'm waiting for a smelly alcoholic baby. And it's just always scary. But this baby started, so I'm happy. And when it starts within 24 hours, that makes me even more happy because it's, you know, you don't have to wait for 2 days, 3 days for it to start to get going. And it makes me confident that the process that I was showing you guys actually works. And even though I have confidence in that every single time, I still worry. It doesn't take away that feeling of, uncertainty. Well, at least for me anyway. So there we are. And that honey should dissolve probably within the next, I would say, 14 to 20 days. But we'll keep an eye on that, and I will keep you guys updated.